Socializing doesn't exhaust everyone the same way. Some people leave conversations feeling energized, lighter, and more connected than before. But if you're watching this, you already know that isn't your experience. You can enjoy being around people, laugh at the right moments, and stay fully engaged, yet still walk away feeling strangely depleted. Not upset, not sad, just drained, like something inside you was quietly overused. This isn't a personality flaw, and it isn't something you're imagining. It's the way your mind processes human interaction. While others are focused only on what's being said, your brain is listening on multiple layers at once. You hear the words, but you also register the pauses, the hesitation before someone responds, and the subtle shifts in tone that don't match the sentence. You pick up on what's being managed emotionally, not just what's being expressed verbally. Most people socialize on the surface. You don't. Your nervous system stays alert around people even when nothing appears wrong. Not because you're anxious, but because you're attuned. Psychologically, this is linked to high social sensitivity, which simply means your brain stays switched on in social environments. It automatically tracks emotional signals. Who feels uncomfortable? Who is holding something back? Who needs reassurance? Who is trying too hard to be liked? This happens without conscious effort. Your mind does it before you have a chance to intervene. That's why socializing often feels fine in the moment but heavy afterward. Your brain doesn't crash under pressure. It stores it. Most people assume exhaustion comes from conflict or obvious stress, but for minds like yours, exhaustion comes from awareness. You carry the emotional weight of the interaction long after it ends. That's why small talk feels disproportionately tiring. It's not shallow. It's incomplete. Your brain keeps searching for meaning that never arrives, so it stays open and unresolved. This is also why people sometimes misunderstand you. They assume you dislike people or prefer isolation. That's not true. You experience people deeply. Crowds feel draining because your system doesn't filter aggressively. It lets everything in. Background conversations, emotional tension between strangers, shifts in energy that no one acknowledges. Your nervous system treats all of it as relevant information, and information costs energy. This is why you tend to prefer fewer interactions rather than constant ones. Not because you're withdrawn, but because you're selective. Depth stabilizes you, noise exhausts you. And here's what rarely gets said out loud. You're often the one quietly regulating the space. You adjust your tone, you soften your reactions, you help conversations stay comfortable. That regulation happens automatically, and it takes more from you than anyone realizes. If this feels uncomfortably accurate, this channel is probably for you. Because what drains you isn't socializing itself. It's what your mind is doing behind the scenes while everyone else relaxes. And there's a deeper layer to this that explains why recovery time is not optional for you. That's what we'll unpack next. What drains you isn't interaction itself. It's regulation. During social moments, you're constantly adjusting yourself to keep things balanced. You monitor your reactions, soften your honesty, and stay alert to how others might interpret what you say. Even when you appear relaxed, your nervous system is actively managing the experience. This constant internal adjustment is known as self-monitoring, and for you, it runs automatically in the background. People who feel energized after socializing usually release energy outward. They react freely, say what comes to mind, and let moments pass without storing them. You do the opposite. You contain energy. You pause before responding. You consider impact. You absorb rather than discharge. Contained energy doesn't disappear when the interaction ends. It stays in your system, waiting to be processed. That's why exhaustion shows up later, not immediately. This is why quiet afterward isn't optional for you. It's not indulgence or avoidance. It's a reset. Your nervous system needs space to release what it carried. Without that space, the overload lingers. You may feel distant, foggy, or emotionally muted. Not because you didn't enjoy the interaction, but because your system is recalibrating. It's returning to a state where it doesn't have to manage anyone else. There's another layer beneath this that deepens social burnout. Your mind is meaning-driven. It doesn't thrive on stimulation for stimulation's sake. It looks for sincerity, emotional clarity, and psychological depth. When interactions stay surface level, your brain doesn't shut off. It works harder. You listen between the lines, you sense what's missing, you track inconsistencies between words and emotions, and when nothing real appears, your system stays open, unresolved, waiting for something solid to land. That openness is one of your strengths, but it's also expensive. It explains why certain conversations leave you energized instead of drained. When there's honesty, depth, and emotional presence, your nervous system relaxes. It doesn't need to scan. It doesn't need to regulate. It doesn't need to anticipate. Depth gives your system permission to rest. Here's the uncomfortable self-check most people skip. Sometimes you don't feel exhausted because people ask too much. You feel exhausted because you give too much access. You take responsibility for emotional comfort that was never yours to manage. You smooth over tension that didn't require fixing. You fill silence because you sense discomfort, not because silence is wrong. That instinct makes you considerate, but it also makes you tired. Boundaries for you aren't about pushing people away. They're about conserving clarity. Not every interaction deserves your full emotional availability. Not every room requires you to carry the atmosphere. Choosing where to engage deeply isn't selfish. It's accurate. And accuracy is how you stay functional instead of depleted. People who experience social burnout aren't rejecting connection. They're rejecting overstimulation without meaning. They don't want fewer people. They want fewer hollow exchanges. When they find environments that value depth, honesty, and psychological safety, they don't disappear. They stay longer than most, because their nervous system finally feels settled. And this is the part that often goes unspoken. Over time, repeated social exhaustion can quietly teach you to shrink, to say no less, to engage halfway, to protect yourself by lowering presence instead of choosing better spaces. That isn't healing. That's survival. And survival mode, even when it looks calm, still costs energy. Understanding your social burnout gives you a different option. You don't have to disappear to stay safe. You don't have to perform to belong. You don't have to earn rest by overextending first. You can choose environments that don't require constant self-regulation. You can allow connection to feel stabilizing instead of depleting. So if you've ever wondered why you need recovery time after being around others, this isn't something to fix. It's something to understand. Your mind is built to notice what others overlook, and that awareness comes with a cost most people never acknowledge. The next video explores what happens when this same type of mind stays quiet for too long, and why silence, for you, isn't emptiness. It's storage, it's processing, and sometimes it's where clarity quietly returns.